You have just heard the rumbling and trumpeting of an African elephant, and this is part 2 of Among the Elephants, Africa's Gentle Giants. Welcome to Our Wild World. I'm your host, Dr. John David Alferts. I've been an educator for over 38 years, serving as an adjunct professor, superintendent, principal, and teacher. Whenever we can, my wife Christina, also an educator, and I are trekking into the wild to see our two-legged, four-legged, and winged friends in the animal kingdom. Together we've been entertained by a mountain gorilla in the impenetrable forest as she played on the stomach of her napping silverback dad. We've been startled by the thunderous roaring of two aggressive hippos in the Okavango Delta as they fought behind our tents, shaking the ground as they did so. We've had a curious African lion lie down outside our tent as she played with our tent bag. While hiking in the bush at Lake Tanganyika, I've come within 75 yards of an elephant family drinking from a stream. At Meru National Park in Kenya, Christina and I came eye to eye with a black mamba who lifted herself up just 12 feet from us, warning us that she was about to strike. After all my time in the bush, I have a story or two to tell. So it makes sense that I'm combining my passion for teaching with my passion for wildlife to launch Our Wild World, introducing listeners to, as the Lakota would say, Bitakuye Oyasin, or all our relations in the animal world. Each episode is meticulously researched and includes my first-hand observations from the bush. I think you'll find it's a podcast like no other. As you listen, be sure to check out our sister social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Blue Sky for photos and videos that Christina and I have taken of the wildlife featured in each podcast episode. And now, let's begin. In part 2 of this special series, Among the Elephants, Africa's Gentle Giants, we will dig deeper into elephant communication, including the recent exciting discovery that elephants use unique names to identify each other and the study's implications. I'll also share how I encountered a matriarchal family of 13 elephants while hiking in the bush at Lake Manyara. Then we'll see how ethologists have learned to identify individual elephants in the field. And finally, we'll discuss the different lives that bull elephants lead from matriarchal-led families, as well as elephant babies, everyone's favorite. Elephants communicate both verbally and non-verbally through at least 3 different methods: audible vocalizations, rumblings through their feet, and especially infrasound. Infrasound is below the frequency of human hearing, typically below 20 hertz. Elephants, giraffes, whales, and dolphins use infrasound to communicate over vast distances. It is believed that elephants can use infrasound through the air or through ground vibrations to communicate with others up to 6 kilometers or 10 miles away. In 2024, while my 57-year-old wife was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, I took a week-long solo safari to Arusha, Tarangire, Lake Manyara, and Ngorongoro Crater. Spending a week with elephants seemed more appealing to me than climbing up the 19,000 feet Mount Kilimanjaro. My wife, Chris, has as big a sense of adventure as I do, and she's an avid, experienced mountain climber, having climbed 14ers in Colorado, the Inca Trail, we did that one together, Kilimanjaro, and the Everest Base Camp. On the Inca Trail, at the age of 56, she raced a 16-year-old to the summit of Dead Woman's Pass, not once, but twice. So I knew she could do Kilimanjaro. At Lake Manyara, where the great elephant conservationist Iain Douglas Hamilton, founder of Save the Elephants and the Elephant Crisis Fund, began his study of elephant migration routes in 1965, I had an unforgettable, magical experience. The elephant encounter that I have always dreamed of having. I took a 3-hour hike with a young 26-year-old National Park ranger named Mufasher. It was just the two of us. Mufasher belonged to a local tribe near Lake Manyara. His father ran out on his mother when he was just a boy, and he became a ranger to support his mother and his 3 siblings. As we walked through the forest, we came across some elephant dung. I mentioned to Mufasher that we had smoked it in South Africa and that it immediately cleaned out our sinuses as well as had a slight psychedelic effect. Mufasher confirmed that elephant dung was used by some of the local tribes as a stomach medicine. They boil it and drink it like tea. It helps to improve stomach problems, he told us. Mufasher also confirmed that local tribes used it to treat congestion. During the COVID pandemic, elephant dung was smoked a lot by Mufasher's tribal men, both to prevent and lessen the effects of COVID. Our winding trail through the bush came out to a narrow river. Mufasher told me it was a holy river to his tribe. Whenever his tribal members approached the river, they washed their hands, put water on their heads and face. It brought them good luck. Mufasher said he always did this himself, and that someday when he had children of his own, he would teach them to do so as well. We both followed the tribal custom. The trail then went back into the forest for a while before it eventually came back out to the river. Just as we came out of the bush, across the narrow river, more of a creek really, a female elephant was just coming out of the bush as well. We startled her. She trumpeted, turned, and went back into the bush. I asked Mufasher if we could wait a while to see if she would come back out. He doubted that she would do so, but said we could wait. Because I do believe that elephant infrasound, with its telepathic-like properties, can somehow pick up our intentions, I tried my best to send messages to the elephant, telling her how much I loved her. As I did with a male elephant my wife and I encountered alongside our tent in the Okavango Delta, described in Part 1, I told the matriarch that people are tricky, and she was right not to trust most people, but I promised she could trust me. I told her that I had come many miles to see her. I also told her all about the elephant charities my wife and I support, primarily Save the Elephants, the Elephant Crisis Fund, and the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. I asked her to please return so we could see her. Suddenly, this matriarch came back out of the woods. Only this time, she brought her whole family down to the river, 14 elephants in all, directly across the shallow, narrow creek from us. It was incredible. Just Mufasher and me. We watched as the family took their drinks. They had several adolescents who stayed close to their mothers. The matriarch was understandably proud of her family, and she seemed pleased that we admired them so. The family seemed as interested in us as we were in them. It was the experience that I had always dreamed of. I literally had tears in my eyes. To be walking in the footsteps of Iain Douglas Hamilton, the great elephant conservationist, at the national park where he started his research before moving on to Samburu Nature Reserve, and to encounter a whole family of elephants on foot, just the ranger and I. Well, wow. Words cannot express my joy. There's pictures of this encounter and video on our accompanying Our Wild World Facebook page and Instagram pages. Now, Mufasher was as amazed by me at this experience. He had been a ranger for 4 years, already in the summer of 2024, at Lake Manyara. Mufasher had been engaged in several firefights with poachers. Each time the rangers were outgunned. But he had only once before encountered an elephant on the trail, and that was a single elephant that he had seen 3 years prior. He had never encountered a whole family on the trail before. I thanked Mufasher for risking his life to save these incredible sentient beings, and I tipped him well, something that is very important to do in Africa. Rangers regularly risk their lives to save the wildlife and have a high mortality rate themselves. The jobs are low-paying, so showing your appreciation is much warranted. My experience at Lake Manyara was amazing and proof to me, once again, of elephant telepathy. Elephants have a plethora of ways to communicate, using both verbal and nonverbal methods to convey their messages. We've already discussed infrasound. Ethologist Katie Payne discovered that elephants use seismic vibrations, communicating sometimes through the vibrations they feel on the ground with the sensitive pads of their feet. She nicknamed the seismic vibration form of communication silent thunder in her book of the same name. Both infrasound and seismic vibrations enable elephants to communicate over extraordinarily long distances, as far as 6 miles or 10 kilometers. Because so much of their communication takes place outside of the range of human hearing, Dr. Joyce Poole, who began studying elephants at Kenya's Amboseli National Park in 1975 alongside Dr. Cynthia Moss, has concluded that humans are aware of only 30% of the conversations between elephants. Perhaps the most striking use of elephant infrasound that I've ever heard of was described in naturalist Lyle Watson's lyrical book, Elephant Phantoms, Tracking the Elephant. Watson wrote that in 1994, the South African Forestry Department did a survey and found just one 45-year-old female elephant left in Knysna, South Africa. Watson was determined to find her, and find her he did. While whale watching, atop a cliff on the eastern limit of the forest reserve at Cranshuk, Watson spotted a rare blue whale, the largest animal in the world. The blue whale spouted a thin column of condensation 40 feet high and showed just a hint of fin before she went below the surface again. Watson recognized the blue whale as female because females are much larger than males. He waited, hoping the female blue whale would surface again. As he waited, Watson wondered why a blue whale would come so close to the coast. It was highly unusual behavior, to say the least. Then Watson became aware of a strange sensation, a reverberation in the air. He was aware that whales communicate through infrasound, but he had never heard such a low moan before. Watson looked across the gorge, and his heart stopped. Down below, on the beach, stood a large female African elephant, with her left tusk broken off near the base, looking out to sea. He recognized her immediately as the lone remaining matriarch the South African Forestry Department had found from the pictures that he had seen of her. Watson's own words now follow. A fully grown African elephant facing left, staring out to sea. She was here because she no longer had anyone to talk to in the forest. She was standing here on the edge of the ocean because it was the next nearest and most powerful source of infrasound. The under rumble of the surface would have been well within her range, a soothing balm for an animal used to being surrounded, submerged by low and comforting frequencies, by the life sounds of a herd. And now this was the next best thing. My heart went out to her. The whole idea of this grandmother, of Minnie, being alone for the first time in her life was tragic, conjuring up the vision of countless other old and lonely souls. Then Watson heard a throbbing in the air. The blue whale was on the surface again, pointed inshore, resting, her blowhole clearly visible. The matriarch was here for the whale, the largest animal in the ocean and the largest living land animal were no more than 100 yards apart, and I was convinced that they were communicating. In infrasound, in concert, sharing big brains and long lives, understanding the pain of high investment in a few precious offspring, aware of the importance and the pleasure of complex sociality, these rare and lovely great ladies were commiserating over the back of a fence of this rocky cape shore, woman to woman, matriarch to matriarch, almost the last of their kind. I turned, blinking, away the tears and left them to it. This was no place for a mere man. Watson's description brings tears to my eyes every time I read it. Clearly, we still have much to learn about elephants and whales and the connections between these two distant relatives. The most frequent form of communication that elephants use is their soft stomach rumblings. Some of these are believed to be infrasonic, beyond human hearing. They have as many different kinds of rumbles as they have needs and desires, giving directions or seeking a friend, conveying disapproval, uncertainty, or fear, calves asking for milk, family members expressing joy at seeing each other after time apart. Kenyan-born ethologist Paula Kahumba, who leads Wildlife Direct and its highly successful Hands Off Our Elephants campaign, wrote in her excellent book, Secrets of the Elephants. Of course, trumpeting is the form of communication that most people think of when they think of elephants. It's also the sound you heard at the start of this podcast. Trumpeting is often used to greet other families of elephants. It may also be used when an elephant feels threatened and wants to scare off a would-be adversary. Dr. Joyce Poole has compared an elephant's use of trumpeting with a human's use of exclamation marks in their speech. Together, all of these forms of communication enable elephant families to stay well connected with other families, even if they are far apart. Dr. Cynthia Moss, who began her life work of studying elephants in 1968 alongside Iain Douglas Hamilton, first at Tanzania's Lake Manyara National Park and then at Kenya's Amboseli National Park, has said, "Elephants are the ultimate social networkers. They know everybody else. They can contact everybody else through low-frequency calls that they make. It's like an elephant Facebook, and they can say where they are and more or less what they're doing." Now, I saw an example of this in 2024 at Tarangire, Tanzania's best national park for elephant watching. In the afternoon, many elephant families were coming down to the Tara River to drink and cross. There were many babies and juveniles. As one family crossed the Tara, they often trumpeted and made rumbling sounds as they greeted another family. A few great bull elephants were also in close proximity, seemingly watching over them all. As they crossed the river, the whole area seemed to be alive with sound. You can hear the elephants in the videos loaded on our sister Facebook, Our Wild World, and Instagram pages. Rumbling is the primary form of communication. In the Okavango Delta, navigating the channels of the delta in a mokoro, a shallow canoe, my wife Chris and I came across a mother and her baby feeding alongside the channel. We were the only mokoro and were able to get very close to the mother and her baby. As they ate, both the mother and her baby softly rumbled towards one another. An elephant's rumbling is a calming sound and is soothing even to the human ear. On another occasion, while camping in the bush at Samburu National Reserve, only a few kilometers from the Save the Elephants Research Center, Chris and I were woken in the night by elephants passing through our campground. We could hear their stomach rumblings as they did so. It is such a reassuring sound. We were just mesmerized. Now, ethologists are making new discoveries about elephant communication all the time. Dr. Joyce Poole started Elephant Voices to advance the study of elephant intelligence and communication and advocate for their conservation. In 2024, researchers from Colorado State University, Save the Elephants, and Elephant Voices found that elephants actually use distinctive names for addressing each other. Their study, published in Nature, Ecology, and Evolution by Mickey Pardo, a Cornell University biologist, used machine learning to confirm that elephant calls contained a name-like component, identifying the intended recipient, a behavior they suspected based on observation. When the researchers played recorded calls, elephants responded affirmatively to calls that were addressed to them by calling back or approaching the speaker. Calls meant for other elephants received less of a reaction. as described by Jamie DeLoss in a posting from Colorado State University. Learning to produce new sounds, a necessary skill for identifying individuals by name, is unusual for most animals. The elephant's ability to generate new rumblings for addressing other elephants by name is considered arbitrary communication. Researcher Jamie DeLoss explains, arbitrary communication, where a sound represents an idea but does not imitate it, generally expands communication capability and is considered a next-level cognitive skill. Because of their use of arbitrary vocaloid labels to identify elephants by name, co-author George Whittemire, a professor in CSU's Warner College of Natural Resources, has concluded that elephants may be capable of abstract thought. Humans and elephants likely developed voice labeling, the naming of individuals with abstract sounds, millions of years ago for the same reasons. Elephants and humans both are highly social animals. The evidence that elephants use unique names to address one another suggests that there are probably other labels or identifiers, what we commonly refer to as words, within elephant rumblings. The 2024 study identified 470 distinct calls from 101 unique callers, corresponding to 117 unique receivers in Samburu National Reserve and Amboseli National Park. The groundbreaking research in elephant communication from Elephant Voices and Save the Elephants may one day enable humans to communicate with elephants, a dream of elephant ethologists and conservationists alike. It's tough to live with elephants when you're trying to share a landscape and they're eating crops, co-author George Whittemire said. I'd like to be able to warn them. Do not come here. You're going to be killed if you come here. If humans are someday able to communicate with elephants, it could be a game changer, not only for their conservation, but for the conservation of other wildlife as well. Lawrence Anthony, the South African elephant whisperer, wrote of the findings of elephant infrasound communication and their implications. Elephants are communicating across vast distances, which shows that these giants of the wilderness are far more developed than we ever believed. They possess a vastly greater intellect than previously thought. So are they telling each other about what is happening to their world and what we humans are doing to them? Given their intelligence, there is no doubt in my mind that this is exactly what is happening. In addition to audible communication, elephants also have nonverbal communication, such as the gestures they make with their trunks, described in Part 1 of the series. Elephants are also able to communicate their excitement or concern through a fluid that secretes from their temporal glands on the sides of their heads. Most tourists observing elephants in the bush will have seen elephants with these secretions. These secretions, called temporin, are associated with a wide range of social interactions, such as greetings after separation, family bonding, and social play, and can be triggered by both excitement and distress. Temporin usually appears to be associated with vocalizing and typically dries within 10 to 15 minutes. One of the most obvious ways to tell the difference between male and female elephants is their size. As with most mammal species, the males are much bigger than the females. Full-grown males are quite noticeably larger than their full-grown female counterparts. Although size varies with each type of elephant, females are, on average, about 8 feet or 2.4 meters tall from shoulder to toe. Males stand 2 feet taller, again on average at 10.5 feet or 3.2 meters tall from shoulder to toe. The biggest difference can be seen in their weight, with males weighing close to double that of female elephants. Around 12 to 15 years of age, male elephants undergo a critical phase called musth. This period is characterized by high testosterone levels. that often result in aggressive behavior, especially in inexperienced young males. The radical shift in behavior captures the attention of the matriarch and other females, gradually leading to the young bull's estrangement from the herd. Bull elephants were previously thought to be loners, often leading solitary lives and coming together with other elephants primarily only to mate. However, ethologists have more recently concluded that bull elephants have rich social lives. Adolescents generally join an older bull elephant's bachelor group. Like the female matriarch of an elephant family, the older patriarch bull will lead his group of bachelors, sharing his knowledge of the best pathways to take to find food and water, as well as how to interact with females to mate. The males of the bachelor herd, just like the family members in the matriarchal group, will show deference to the patriarch. At Saville East, we saw a large boys' club of huge bulls at a watering hole. Rangers had fresh water pumped in so that there would be water in times of drought. It was fascinating to see how amiable the bull elephants were, taking turns drinking. When one large bull approached, perhaps having taken a very long journey of miles through the arid landscape to reach the watering hole, the rest of the bulls moved out of the way to allow him to drink. They had no problem sharing at all. The video of this big boys club at the watering hole is also on our Facebook page. In her book, Last Days of Eden, written with Hugo van Lawick, the first husband of Dr. Jane Goodall, Elspeth Huxley shared her own observations about how well-mannered elephants are. An aspect of behavior shared by elephants and humans is the habit of orderly queuing. Elephants are more polite than humans, or at any rate, some humans, and queue jumping seems to be unknown. I remember watching several hundred elephants coming down at event evening to drink from the Mudanda Dam in the Saville East National Park in Kenya. From bush and plain, the elephants converged upon the dam in their family parties, dignified and patient, each group waiting its turn. There is no unseemly scrambling, pushing, or shoving. The members of one group advanced with even paces to the water's edge. They drank, they sprayed water over themselves and each other, while the calves splashed and played just like human children. When everyone had finished, the group withdrew with leisurely precision, and another took its place until all had drunk. Darkness was falling, and the last party, still slow marching with their calves behind them, melted into the bush. Without traffic lights or traffic wardens, without policemen, timetables, or commanders-in-chief, they achieved the desired results far more effectively than those usually charged with directing crowds of people or bodies of troops. I totally agree with Huxley's quote there, because we have seen that orderly queuing behavior in elephants numerous times in the bush. Though both male and female elephants can have a longevity of over 60 years, like humans, males tend to have shorter lives than females. Dr. Cynthia Moss found that male elephants at Amboseli National Park in Kenya have higher mortality than females. 80% of females reach their fertile age at Amboseli, while only 39% of males reached their first musth, generally in the late teens to the mid-20s. While the exact cause for higher male mortality is not known, ethologist Paula Kahumba has suggested that it could be because males do not benefit as long from the protective effect of matriarchs and being surrounded by family as females do. Despite spending most of their time separated from their birth families, bull elephants never forget them and will return to them occasionally. They will also protect them when necessary. My wife and I saw an example of the bull elephant's connection to his family of origin and the elephant use of infrasound to communicate over long distances at Amboseli National Park in 2018. We were observing an elephant family with several adolescents when along came a disagreeable bull elephant. This bull had lost one of his tusks, likely in a fight based on his temperament. The bull seemed intent on bullying the adolescents in the family. He chased the adolescents into a pond and effectively separated them from their family. Every time they tried to get out, he bullied them back in. When their mother and the matriarch in the family tried to intervene, he asserted his dominance with them as well. Clearly, the family needed help. At this point, I believe the matriarch used her infrasound to contact a large bull, probably the patriarch of the family. Way out in the horizon, almost as far as our eyes could see, we saw a tremendously large bull, a great tusker, come charging towards the family. It was clear he was coming to their aid. The giant tusker chased the disagreeable one-tusk bully away. But the bully bull wasn't going to give up that easily. He turned and he challenged the old bull. They locked tusks at one point and swung their trunks at each other. The family, reunited with the adolescents finally out of the swamp, stood in a line seemingly to cheer the giant tusker on. It was a clash of the titans for several minutes before the one-tusk bully decided that he'd had enough. Even then, he very slowly left the vicinity and kept turning around, looking at them seemingly with disdain. It was clear he was angry and he wanted to save face. But the giant bull was having none of it and stayed between the family and the bully one-tusker until he finally gave up. It was a fascinating and revealing episode. The encounter once again showed the ability of elephants to use infrasound. It was clear the giant bull had been summoned by the family for help, even though he had been several miles away. The episode also demonstrated that even though they lead separate lives, bull elephants remain connected to their family units and are a support that can be called upon when needed. You can see pictures of this entire encounter on our Facebook, Our Wild World, or our Instagram social media pages. Along with the Samburu National Reserve, Amboseli is one of the two best places in Kenya to see elephants. The Amboseli elephant population of approximately 1,500 is a cross-border population inhabiting both Kenya and Tanzania, where they are unfortunately less protected. Amboseli is also where Dr. Cynthia Moss, along with Dr. Joyce Poole, have done their groundbreaking research on elephants. Dr. Moss began her research at Amboseli in 1972, after having spent a year working with Iain Douglas Hamilton in Lake Manyara National Park. Together, Moss and Hamilton learned they could identify individual elephants by their unique ear patterns, veins, and tusks. No two elephants are alike. Using these techniques, Hamilton was able to identify over 400 different elephants at Lake Manyara. Moss was soon able to identify over 700 different elephants by sight at Amboseli. It's also at Amboseli that you are likely to see the iconic scenes of elephants with Kilimanjaro in the background. For Moss, Hamilton, and Poole, and other elephant ethologists, it was a game changer to be able to identify individual elephants. As Dr. Moss explained to Carl Safina in his beautifully written book, Beyond Words, What Animals Think and Feel, when you look at a group of anything, lions, zebras, elephants, you're seeing just two flat dimensions. But once you know them individually, their personalities, who their mother was, who their kids are, it adds new dimensions. By the time the bull reaches his mid-30s, he has reached his sexual peak and will begin to compete for mating rights. Periodically, males will enter a condition called musth, when their hormones increase nearly 60 times their normal level. Think of it as a massive male testosterone increase, an overdose of Viagra. Bulls in musth will have an intense sexual drive. Other elephants can smell that the bull is in musth and will give them space. Bull elephants and musth can smell when a female is ready to mate by touching and sniffing her ovulating backside with their trunks. Bull elephants have an S-shaped penis, and it takes a bit of practice to gain enough command of it to insert it successfully into the female's vagina. Once a bull finds a receptive female, he will likely stay with her for several days, up to 4, mating multiple times. At Tarangire, I did observe a bull mounting a female, and the copulation lasted for about 30 seconds, which is the average. Elephants are the slowest breeders in the animal kingdom. The gestation period for elephants is between 20 to 22 months. The interval between births is about 5 years. During their first 6 months, baby elephants will depend exclusively on their mother's milk. Babies will continue to nurse for 2 to 5 years. However, after about 6 months, baby elephants will start to sample the solid foods they observe older family members eating. When a calf is born, it is raised and protected by the whole matriarchal herd. While predators will seldom threaten adult elephants, they will kill a baby elephant if given the chance. Crocodiles are also a threat at watering holes. My wife Chris and I visited Kenya's Samburu National Reserve during a terrible drought in 2022. We watched a small family of 5 elephants in the riverbed digging for water. The matriarch appeared to be teaching her family how it was done, using her tusks to loosen the sand, while her trunk removed debris as it probed deeper for water. As she worked, her little baby was clearly anticipating a drink of cold, cool water. The infant affectionately touched her mother's trunk with her own again and again. Before long, water seeped into the hole, and mother and baby drank from the well that she had created. As they did so, 2 adolescents waited patiently, as elephants always seemed to do, until they were done for their drink. The peaceful scene was disturbed, though, by a lioness, who began crossing the riverbed not far away. We were immediately alarmed, because Mom had strolled from her baby's side. The elephants didn't seem to be aware that the lioness was near. Fortunately, though, the lioness apparently wasn't hungry and laid down in the sand for a rest. The elephant family was safe. If there's a perceived threat nearby, the elephant group will form a protective circle around the baby. In 2025, at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, the elephant herd was observed forming a protective circle around their young when a 5.2 magnitude earthquake occurred. The video of this protective circle, which lasted for about 4 minutes, was widely shared on U.S. television news networks. But as with humans, tragedies can and do occur. One night in 2019, while camping in the Savuti Marsh in the remote northern part of Chobe National Park, we were sitting by the campfire when our guide Moses said, "Look, elephants!" An elephant family was passing just on the other side of our truck. In the dark night, we could only make out their silhouettes. I've never gotten used to how quiet elephants are when they're walking. For such a large, heavy animal, you'd think they'd make a lot of noise, but their feet are padded and they are very quiet as they pass. The only noise we heard was the rustling of branches as they fed on some of the acacia trees' leaves. It was a very special moment. Sandwiched between the herd as they crossed in procession was a small infant. Later that night, sleeping in our tent, we were serenaded by lions roaring. My wife, Chris, said, "They sound very near." Yes, I agreed. They were soon a whole lot nearer. I fell fast asleep, and Chris did too, but she was soon awoken by the sound of rustling on the other side of our tent. She could also hear fabric tearing. It sounded as though a lion was trying to tear into our tent. Not sure what was happening, and not wanting to make any noise, Chris began poking me with a water bottle. I woke just as I heard a tent zip. Moses, our guide, had heard the noise as well and knew a lion was in our campsite. He banged some pots and the lion took off. The fabric the lion was tearing was actually our tent bag, which the lion carried off with him into the bushes. Chris and our guide, Moses, found it. The sun was just coming up, and we could see in the sandy road the lion's footprints as she ran from our campsite. Moses thought the lion had been called to a kill by the rest of her pack. In running to join them, the lion became distracted by our campsite and decided to check it out. We got in our Land Rover and we followed the lioness's paw prints to see if we could find her pride. Well, it didn't take long. 2 male lions were both wrestling by some bushes. 2 lionesses were both eating a part of something. Then we saw a male lion lying on top of a female lion. At first we thought they were copulating, but then we realized the male lion was wrestling with the female lion for her kill, a baby elephant. The lioness was in no mood to surrender the kill, so she kept eating the baby while the male sat on top of her. It was an unusual lion sighting in that there were an equal number of males and females in the pride, 3 of each. It was also unusual in that a female will usually let the male eat first. Well, not this time. Women's lib is apparently finally caught up with the lion world. But it was devastating to see the lions eating a baby elephant. No doubt this was the same baby that we had seen passing by our campsite with her family the night before. To think the poor mother carried this baby for 22 months only to have the baby end up like this. It was a very small baby. We wondered what had happened. Perhaps the lions had ambushed the baby when the family was at a watering hole. Maybe the whole pack had been attacked. I understand that this was the circle of life. Lions are beautiful animals, and they're even more endangered than elephants. Lions have to eat too. But all I could think of was the sorrow the mother and the rest of the family must have been experiencing. I wouldn't have felt bad if it was any other animal, but an elephant. I was saddened beyond words. Despite the dangers they face, baby elephants seem to have an idyllic youth. As Daphne Sheldrick, whose Sheldrick Wildlife Trust in Nairobi, Kenya, has saved over 300 orphaned elephants who grew up to sire at least 77 babies of their own, said, "To be a baby elephant must be wonderful, surrounded by a loving family 24 hours a day. I think it must be how it ought to be in a perfect world." Well, this concludes the second episode of this 3-part series, Elephants Among Us. Part 3 will further explore adolescence, elephant play, the best parks in Africa to see elephants, some excellent books and films on elephants, the threats to elephant survival, and the organizations working to save them, including visits to the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust and Save the Elephants. This episode has been dedicated to Dr. Cynthia Moss, who began her extraordinary work on behalf of elephants in 1967 with Dr. Iain Douglas Hamilton at Lake Manyara National Park in Tanzania. In 1972, she moved to Kenya's Amboseli National Park, where she has remained ever since. Together, Dr. Moss and Dr. Douglas Hamilton perfected elephant identification using their unique ears, markings, veins, and tusks. Thanks to Dr. Moss's books, Elephant Memories, Echo of the Elephants, and Portraits in the Wild, Dr. Moss was able to introduce elephants as highly intelligent, emotional beings to the world. Along with Iain Douglas Hamilton, Cynthia Moss's advocacy for elephants helped lead to the worldwide ban on ivory. She founded the Amboseli Trust to continue to advocate for Amboseli's elephants and to continue their ongoing studies. Thank you, Dr. Moss, for being a true angel to elephants and for a life well led. If you are so moved to donate to help elephants through this podcast, I ask that you please contribute to Save the Elephants or the Elephant Crisis Fund. Both of them are partners with the Wildlife Conservation Network and have the highest rating possible by charitynavigator.com. If you do decide to make a donation, please mention Our Wild World when you do so. It's just a way for them to know that the podcast is out there and is making a little bit of a difference. Please be sure to check out our sister Facebook, Instagram, X, and Blue Sky pages for accompanying pictures that my wife and I have taken in Africa. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like it, follow us, and leave us a comment. Be sure to tell your friends. New episodes are released every 3 weeks on Tuesdays. Please join me again for Our Wild World. You can contact me anytime at ourwildworldshow@gmail.com. I'm also available to give talks on many of the animals featured in this series. You can download a flyer with my available talks from our Facebook page. The talks are free as long as they are within a 1-hour radius of Rockford, Illinois. I do ask for a minimum donation to a wildlife charity for each talk, if it's possible. Thank you for listening. And remember, every breath you take connects you with every other living being on this planet. You are a part of nature. Love it, protect it, and nature will never disappoint you, strengthening and healing you in return.